the special counsel of the tribal chief Roman Reigns in his legendary reign. Brock Lesnar's advocate, the man who broke the Undertaker streak at WrestleMania. The passionate supporter of CM Punk backstage against all odds. The man behind the outbreaks of Stone Cold Steve Austin and Mick Foley. A guy that was producing a wrestling show at the age of 20 in one of New York's biggest nightclubs with Ric Flair. The visionary who laid the foundation for the Attitude Era by revolutionizing the wrestling business with ECW. All these accolades describe one same person, folks. Paul Heyman. And to me, he's a genius. In this video, you will discover or rediscover all his incredible achievements, his greatest successes, and we are going to see together what makes him one of the most influential individuals in the history of pro wrestling. You are in the wrestling paradise. Why is Paul Heyman a genius? Here we go! If I say Paul Heyman, chances are you're thinking of this incredible manager who had historic successes all these years. Do you realize that the one who has been with Roman Reigns in recent times in a legendary reign is the same guy who was Brock Lesnar's advocate when he conquered the Undertaker streak at WrestleMania 30? The same guy who was with CM Punk when he had his WWE champion reign, which was already historic at the time too. However, those are just the most famous Paul Heyman guys, and with whom he was associated on screen at one point. Can anyone sit at my table and say, I know a manager with a better track record than Paul Heyman? Let's be honest guys, there is none. No one has been at the forefront of the longest reign of the modern era of one of the greatest superstars of all time. Of course, I'm talking about the tribal chief Roman Reigns. While having already been at the forefront of several other reigns, including Brock Lesnar's between 2017 and 2018 that also made history. As a matter of fact, the conquest of the streak itself in 2014 was already so tremendous and unique that it would have been enough to make him the greatest manager of all time. But you might say, hey Johnny, he's not the one who won the titles. And then I will tell you, yeah, okay, but without him, the superstar would not have won these titles from the start. And yes, it may sound shocking, but I'll explain to you why. Check this out. First, in the case of Roman Reigns, they both said many times that they worked a lot together to constantly improve and elevate each other. And just look at the facts. When he was still the big dog, without Paul Heyman at his side, Roman Reigns was quite average in his promos. Of course, that's only my opinion, but if I look back at this infamous suffering succotash promo, I think it absolutely sucks. But as the tribal chief, with his wise man at his side, Roman delivered the best promos of his life. There is no doubt, folks, that Paul helped Roman to gain more confidence, but also to be better in his acting, his intensity, his charisma. Since August 2020, Roman Reigns is awesome, and without Paul, he would not have been as good. Tell me what you think in the comments, but to me, it is obvious. Would Roman have had this historical reign if he had not improved thanks to Paul? Between you and me, I don't think so. And in the case of Brock Lesnar, let me just tell you a story that will make you realize the crucial role that Heyman played for him. In 2002, when Lesnar had not yet officially started in the main roster and was about to have a dark match after being trained at Ohio Valley Wrestling, Brock was talking to some veterans who were giving him horrible advice. Listen to this. They recommended him to play a Russian character. So let me tell you this. Do you really think that he would have conquered the Undertaker streak if he had been Brock Lesnar? What a bad idea for such a phenomenon. But that's not all. These veterans, they didn't give him just one bad advice, but two bad advices. They also told him that he should not move in the ring, that he should remain static. Can you imagine how bad that would have been? Do you think Brock could have been an intense savage by standing still in the middle of a ring like those veterans wanted? Of course, the answer is no. And who was the one who saved Brock from that terrible advice? That was Paul. First, his friend Taz introduced him to Brock by telling him everything the veterans wanted him to do, and then Paul had a great idea. He produced all of Brock's matches from there. He took him under his wing. He nicknamed him the next big thing, which Vince McMahon thought was a stupid nickname, which is why all the credit goes to Paul. And while he could have failed in the main roster by being a Russian who does not move, he succeeded by becoming champion against The Rock only a few months after his debut in 2002. Do you think Brock would have done this on his own by listening to the bad advice of these veterans? No, of course not. And I'm not afraid to tell you guys, without Paul, there is no Brock. So all of those big wins where he destroyed John Cena, Randy Orton, Goldberg, all those title reigns, it's thanks to Paul's help backstage. So Brock owes him a lot. What about CM Punk? Where would he be without Paul Heyman? Probably making a comic about the pro wrestler career he would have dreamed of having. Because clearly, without Paul, nothing would have been the same. As soon as he signed at the WWE in 2005 after making waves in the Indies, the officials didn't know what to do with him because he didn't match their traditional profile of larger-than-life main eventers. As a matter of fact, they quickly sent him to OVW where Paul worked at the time, telling Paul to fire him. Do you realize that they wanted to get rid of him in 2005? In fact, they had recruited him without watching any of his matches, but only listening to the buzz he had, which was already a bad start. But then, let me ask you this. Do you think Heyman listened to his superiors? Do you think he followed the instructions? Not at all. Against all odds, Paul kept CM Punk because he was the only one to see his potential, to think that he was a star, that he was excellent, and he made him his protege. Besides, it's funny because Punk is perhaps the only guy who was first a Paul Heyman guy backstage before becoming one on the screen. The fact of the matter is that instead of firing him, he made him his guy. He took him with him when he went to the new version of ECW. He constantly defended him behind the scenes against everyone. And even when he was no longer in the WWE between 2006 and 2012, Paul kept in touch with Punk every day. Not only as a friend, but also to give him lots of advice. The reality, folks, is that without Paul, Punk would have probably been fired, and he would have never had the title reigns he had in WWE, nor would he have become one of the most popular wrestlers. It's mind-blowing to take a step back and to think that the summer of Punk would not have happened without Paul. And what I also want to point out in all of this is that for each of these three superstars we talked about, each time he was in a different role, and that did not prevent him from being great. With Roman since August 2020, he has been the special counsel, the wise man, the one who looks at Roman with admiration, who carries his belts, who praises him whenever he has the opportunity to do so, and he does it better than anyone. And in terms of moments of emotions, facial expressions, with Roman, Paul is 5 stars. With Brock, he was the advocate, the one who made all the promos for the Beast Incarnate by presenting him to us as the ultimate conqueror. And on a personal note, it was clearly Paul's promos in the first month of 2014 that made me a Brock fan. He was able to deliver epic moments in which he was bragging about his achievements, and in my eyes, it was so great. Do you know any other managers that were as good at it as he is? With Brock, his way of living the matches ringside was also amazing. It was clearly a part of the match. He was so invested in it that when you saw him, you would also be invested. Anyway, I can't say it enough. Paul's acting is wonderful. It always was, and I can't say how many times I admired his acting. And with CM Punk, he had yet another role where he was whether in the role of a friend, a partner in crime, a belt holder too. And for the record, that was something that made Paul upset sometimes because it weighed 39 pounds. It was also excellent, and once again, it proves his versatility. But hold on folks, he not only impacted the careers of Roman Reigns, Brock Lesnar, and CM Punk, there were others, and not the least. Check this out. Stone Cold Steve Austin.
What?
I said Stone Cold Steve Austin, one of the greatest of all time. When he was still a young wrestler at WCW, Paul Heyman was the first one to see his potential, to be impressed by his intensity and ferocity in the ring, and he took him with him in his dangerous alliance. We can say that he was the first to give him a real chance to shine. And that's not all. When Austin was fired from the WCW, guess who was the one that made him sign at ECW and the first to let him do promos where he could express all his anger? You guessed it, it's Paul. For the first time, thanks to Heyman, Steve was able to cut some promos where he said everything that pissed him off, and he was able to lay the foundations of his Stone Cold character. Do you really think that without Paul, we would have had the best possible version of the Rattlesnake in the WWE? Let's also not forget that before being Stone Cold, Vince McMahon made him a character called the Ringmaster that didn't talk. So in the end, we can really say that it was Paul Heyman who gave birth to Stone Cold, and certainly not Vince. At least, not in the beginning. You may disagree, but let's talk about it in the comments if you have another point of view. In the list of superstars that he helped to improve through the years, we can mention Mick Foley in ECW, who would later become a legend. Edge at the time that Paul was in charge of SmackDown in 2002, where he really took him to the next level. Bobby Lashley at OVW, with whom Paul even spoke one evening for 4 hours at the time to get to know him better and to write him the character that suited him as much as possible. The list is already impressive, and as a bonus I could even mention Big Show, Kurt Angle, and a certain mean Mark Callis when he was in WCW, which we know better today as The Undertaker. If you are not yet convinced that Paul Heyman is a genius, don't move. I still have some arguments for you, and not just any arguments. In everything we talked about so far, what stands out a lot is that he has amazing acting skills, and that in his promos he is able to sell his proteges in an extraordinary way. Between us, I'm such a fan of his promos. He is one of those rare individuals in the world of sports entertainment I could easily listen to for hours. I can even go further and say, he would be able to make me buy sand, even if I was in the desert. Do you also love his promos? He is so good in his cadence, his tones, his variations of rhythm, the emotions he transmits, that in the end, almost each one of Paul's promos is a masterpiece. And he is even able to do them in interviews or in shows, at any place, at any time. And that truly is a sign of greatness. How many memorable promos has he done over time, folks? Tell me in the comments the ones that you love the most. Personally, I would say his legendary pipe bomb in 2001 with Vince McMahon, where he was angrier than ever. Also, the day after WrestleMania 30, after Brock's victory over The Undertaker, where he managed to completely control a crowd that was hostile at first. Here are some little extracts of it. It is the greatest privilege of my career to serve as the advocate for Brock Lesnar, the conqueror of the Undertaker's shriek, a shriek that lasted nearly a quarter of a century. I understand how you feel. You're in shock, which shows me your lack of intelligence, because we hate to say we told you so, but ladies and gentlemen, we told you so! Let's get one thing straight. Brock Lesnar is not here to put smiles on people's faces. Brock Lesnar is here to shock the WWE universe and put tears in the eyes of children. But here's what really gets to me. When the match was over, John Bradshaw Layfield and those two other things that call themselves announcers stood up and gave a standing ovation along with 80,000 people in the Superdome. Superdome, Hogan, not Silverdome. To The Undertaker. Gave a standing ovation to the guy that lost the fight. Brock Lesnar always taught me, in every fight, there's a winner and a loser. Well, last night, The Undertaker was a loser! And then, you got a bunch of guys in the locker room last night coming up to me saying, "Hey Paul, I could have been the one to break the streak. I could have beat The Undertaker, so why didn't ya?" Wendy Orton didn't break the streak, Shawn Michaels didn't break the streak, Triple H didn't break the streak. You know why? They're all wannabes. Brock Lesnar is the one! Because Brock Lesnar is the one in 21-1. Ladies and gentlemen, they are WWE Hall of Famers, WWE Legends, WWE Superstars, and the key to that is that they're all plural. And there's only one Brock Lesnar. This promo was awesome. And I could also mention his promo where he had the guts to arrive with CM Punk's theme song for a Raw in Chicago in March 2014, when Punk had just left the WWE, and once again he managed to manipulate them brilliantly. That makes me ask you a question. Who do you think is better than Paul Heyman on the microphone? I find it very difficult to answer, and that says it all. And what's also crazy is that he had other jobs in his career in which he made a huge impact on the world of pro wrestling. Check this out, guys. In his ECW promotion in the 90s, he revolutionized the business by being the first to embrace the extreme, to be hardcore, to be controversial, to completely leave the cartoonist universe in which wrestling was at the time, and to innovate by introducing anti-hero characters, storylines that were much more real and more related to society at the time. As Paul himself said, Stone Cold had his first beer in ECW. A very symbolic sentence to say that everything that made the success of the Attitude Era in WWE had already been imagined by Paul Heyman in his Temple of Extreme. Just for that, he was a visionary. When he was the head writer of SmackDown in 2002, he managed to transform what was clearly the B show of the WWE into the show that had the highest attendance, that sold the most merchandise, and even beat Monday Night Raw in the ratings several times in the fall of 2002, which had happened only on rare occasions since its creation. This is a real achievement for Paul, and he did it by betting on the talent of Eddie Guerrero, Kurt Angle, Rey Mysterio, and others. And when he was much younger, Paul had already done some incredible things, like becoming a photographer for WWE when he was only 14, having managed to get into the business without knowing anyone, spotting Vince McMahon Sr. in the place he used to have dinner in New York to get the press pass. Can you imagine the guts it takes to make it in wrestling as a teenager? During those years, he even had his own newsletter. He had a movie collectibles business. He also worked as a photographer at Studio 54, one of New York's biggest nightclubs, where he even produced a wrestling party at only 20 years old, in which he had managed to bring Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes. Let's just be aware of his extraordinary journey, everything he has accomplished in his career, and from a very young age. It is absolutely astonishing. We can only respect what he did, his influence on the career of many great superstars, his vision. Between us, do you know other wrestling personalities that accomplished as much as him in different fields? Obviously, if there are, they are very rare, and for years he has been blessing us with his greatness. Ladies and gentlemen, his name is Paul Heyman, and without a shadow of a doubt, he is a genius. Now you know why I think Paul Heyman is a genius. Let me know if you disagree, or if, like me, his track record leaves you speechless. Who are the other individuals, in your opinion, that have also impacted the wrestling industry as much? Of course, all of this is just my point of view, and the whole idea of this video is to talk about it together while respecting everyone's opinion. We all have the same passion, We are brothers and sisters of wrestling, and it would be a pleasure to discuss all of this together. We can say that this topic raises a lot of questions. I hope you had a good time watching this video, and I invite you to stay in the paradise of wrestling to look at some other ones. See you right away.
And that's the bottom line, 'cause Stone Cold said so. What?